I think the Niners just flat out believe their own hype. They love the hype that they get. Every time they come out flat, it's right after they got hyped up. So like all offseason, people said they were going to be great. They lose to the Bears. Next week, come back, take care of the Seahawks. People say, oh, Niners are back. Jimmy Garoppolo, Niners football. That's a Super Bowl team. What do they do the next week? Lose to Denver. They believe their own hype. And it's crazy is this is a team in 2019 that had a chip on its shoulder. Everyone was doubting them. Remember Ryan Clark? They're pretenders. They're going to lose to Mason Rudolph. And the Niners, that fueled them. And they went 8-0. They went to the Super Bowl. And they all got paid off of that. Kyle got an extension. Armstead, Kittle, Debo, Warner. All those guys got paid for life, set for life off of that run, which was fueled off of everyone doubting them nationally. But they didn't win the Super Bowl. They lost. They still say that they were the best team that year. They believe that they should have won that game and they got screwed because of the Bosa call on 3rd and 15. They celebrated with Lil Wayne after the loss and continue to say that they were the best team. They've done everything they can to keep that team together, which basically says they feel they're the best team in the league. They don't have to prove it. They just are. They are the best team in the league. And anytime they win one game and the national media says, oh, scariest team in the league, they're like, thank you. Thank you for giving us the recognition we're so thirsty for because we feel we should get that recognition without actually having to win a Super Bowl because that's fluky. I mean, things can happen, but we're essentially Super Bowl champions. And that's how we're going to act. So that's why they're 5-4. It's like it doesn't matter if we start off slow. It doesn't matter if we give away a game or we don't take the Chargers seriously. We essentially are great. And we'll turn it on down the line. And to me, what's crazy about that is the culture that is set by the head coach and the veterans. Kyle, Trent Williams, Kittle, Armstead, Warner, all the guys who have gotten paid. Those are the ones you wonder, like, what's their effort going to be like this week? When it's consistently the guys who bring it every week for years are the guys who haven't gotten paid yet. The guys who aren't in the inner sanctum of the holy inner trinity of this team. Elijah Mitchell, Talanoa Hufanga, Nick Bosa. The list goes on and on. Jeff Wilson Jr. before he left. The guys who are fighting to get really basically set for life and become made men in the Niners team. I think they have a weird culture that Jed created. You rewarded Kyle for losing the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You did, and you created this culture of no accountability. Kyle has a lifetime contract, essentially a lifetime deal here, as long as he wants it. And anyone else that's gotten that extension feels like they can do anything. Deebo Samuel can do whatever, and he's going to get 7 targets. Meanwhile, Jawan Jennings might just not get targeted at all until your backs are against the wall in the fourth quarter. Because who is he, and what has he proven? He hasn't gotten paid yet. I think this Niners team believes its own hype, and I think that's a big problem. They're basically going to tell us, like, it doesn't matter. We could go, because they're going to skate into the playoffs. Easy record. Easy schedule, easy division. Then they're going to turn it on and be a dominant team. That kind of feels like the team that's going to lose in the first round of the playoffs at home to some freaking wild card team that has no business beating the Niners, but it could be Tom Brady.
Yeah.
It could be Tom Brady. The Niners need to flip the switch freaking now. I'm sorry, I just talked for like 5 minutes. Go ahead.
No, it's great, man. You got it out. I think the Niners are what Jimmy and Kyle Shanahan is, which is a B+ team. They think they're an A+ team, but they're a B+ team, and they haven't proven to be an A+ team yet. And I think you just kind of summed it up perfectly, right? They need to show that they can score points on a consistent basis with some of the top teams in the NFL. Kyle Shanahan and Jimmy are never going to get a better roster than this. I really don't believe that they're going to come back next year. I mean, Jimmy probably, who knows if he'll be the quarterback next year. I don't think so. But even if he does, Jimmy and Kyle are never going to have a better opportunity, more weapons than they have right now this season. So if they're not going to be able to put it together and be a high-powered scoring offense, are they really ever going to be able to?
Also, let's come back to Debo. I feel like Debo is a great microcosm of the Niners culture, which I think is a little messed up. Look at the difference between Debo last year and this year. Debo, who hadn't gotten the extension yet. Debo, who hadn't gotten the seal of approval from Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. He brought it every week. He was the standard of excellence on this team. At 25 years old, we talk about a standard for a team. It doesn't, not playing down to opponents. That's what it's about. Mm-hmm. Debo set the standard at 25 on a rookie deal, second-round pick. It's pretty heady stuff. Niners give him this extension. All of a sudden, bad off season, not having a great year, really not setting the standard. Still a great athlete, but certainly not setting the standard. And I'm not blaming Debo. This is a culture that Jed created by giving Kyle carte blanche after a Super Bowl loss and letting them perpetuate this myth that they're somehow the best team in the league. They don't have to prove it. All they have to do is win one game and listen to a bunch of national pundits like Colin Cowherd say they're the scariest team in the league, and the Niners are like, boom, that proves it right there because that guy said it. And he works for NFL Network, so it must be true.
Well, I mean, they're underplaying, right? Everyone predicted before the game. I mean, most people predicted before the season is going to be a Bills 49ers Super Bowl. I think most people I talked to said that. Most of the fan base believes that the 49ers would probably have been lost maybe one or two games at this point in the season. Last night before the game, everyone predicted the 49ers were going to win, and they said that it's not even
win
close.
Big. 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
Didn't happen.
I had a contest on my Twitter to give away a Christian McCaffrey jersey. Everyone predicted like a 10-point blowout that the Niners
didn't happen
in the 30s. So everyone is saying that the 49ers should be scoring more than they are, should be playing better than they are, but they're not. So they're underplaying. They're not playing.
Let's go through the whole season. They go to Carolina, just destroy Carolina, who was, teetering on the brink of disaster anyway. They fire their head coach the next day. The Niners go to West Virginia, and they're like celebrating like the season's over. And everyone's saying the Niners are great. Cowherd, all these guys, watch out for the Niners. No one picks them to lose to the Falcons. Then they come out flat, lose to the Falcons. But then they switch the narrative. They trade for Christian McCaffrey. Once again, even though they just lost to the freaking Falcons, people were like, oh my God, watch out for the Niners. Most dangerous team in the league. What do? Lose by 21 to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Every time the national media hypes up the Niners believe it and fall flat. So what's interesting was last year they were 3-5, and they had to run a gauntlet on the road. Every week I was flying to the Midwest, Cincinnati, over and over and over again in the cold, must-win games, and it required urgency. And it brought out the best in them, and it propelled them to the NFC Championship game. This year, when is the urgency going to happen? Next week against the Colt McCoy, maybe. They have a really easy road to the playoffs, a weak division, a weak schedule. I'm afraid this team is just going to coast to the playoffs and then tell themselves, here we go. This is where we flip the switch and get shocked at home by some freaking team, the Giants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That doesn't have any hype from the national media. No hype.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad we got the W last night. And I think the 49ers are going to win some games. They're going to go on a little bit of a run. But it's like you said, the thing to me is if you're not blowing out these teams that you should beat, then how are you going to compete with these really good teams when you see them in the playoffs? And that's my concern. I think this is year 6 for Kyle Shanahan. He's still under 500 as a coach. For me, what I need to see is this is probably the best team you're going to have. This is the best roster you're going to have. This is the easiest schedule you're going to have. This is the season where I want to see him make things happen in the postseason. And I think in order to do that, you have to start blowing out some of these teams right now to show that you got what it takes to compete with these better teams once the postseason comes.
Yeah, and I want to talk to Jed here. The reason the Niners play down to their opponents is because you have created a culture of, complacency in the organization. You just want to contend. You want the national media to say you're good. You want hype. And what you have right now is a team that's underperforming. A team that would be better off if Mike McDaniel were the head coach or Robert Saleh. And now you got DeMeco Ryans, the third of the trio, who's probably going to leave next year. If you acknowledge that the team would be better off with either one of those other two guys who left already, and that Kyle's the reason the team is underperforming, if they lose in the first round of the playoffs because of the stuff we're talking about right now, Jed, you got to acknowledge that there is something broken with this culture and you got to fix it. And I think the fix is changing the head coach, maybe making DeMeco Ryans the guy. I'm not saying do it yet. Obviously, this team could go to the playoffs, win the Super Bowl, in which case, give them the lifetime contract. I don't care. But they haven't done that yet. And they haven't really acted like a team that's going to do it. So, Jed, I hope you're watching very carefully. Just because the talking heads on ESPN and NFL Network like your team today doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, something that I think fans need to understand is because, I'm seeing some comments in here too, is I do a SWOT analysis on myself 4 times a year. And this, my whole mentality every day is, how can I improve, right? Even when I do good, I look at my numbers, like in my business, for example. If I have a good week, a good quarter, good month, whatever, I'm like, okay, I did a great job. How can I do better? And that's where I look at the 49ers in the same manner. It's not like, yes, I'm happy we got the W, but they are still not playing up to their potential. And I think that's what the issue is.
And Jed, you need to create a culture where people need to prove themselves. Kyle Shanahan did his best work in 2019 when he needed to prove himself. It was his 3rd year. It was time to prove something. He hadn't gotten an extension. He did. And then all of a sudden you took away all human incentive. And I feel like Jed doesn't understand human incentive because of who he is and where he came from.
Yeah.
He doesn't get it. He wants to crown people because he was crowned. It doesn't help. It hasn't helped Jed. It hasn't helped Kyle. You want to build in incentives for people to work hard, Jed. So I wonder if Kyle actually, if they do get rid of Kyle and he goes to another organization with a better structure, if he could have more success, even though he's not going to change who he is. Maybe another owner would actually stand up to Kyle and be like, I'm not going to say yes 100% of the time to you. I actually know what I'm doing and we can work together. Where Jed's like, hey man, thank you so much for saving my reputation. It was looking real bad there after Tom Sula and Chip Kelly. Just keep getting the people on ESPN and NFL Network to say you're a genius because it makes me look good.
Yeah. And to be clear, I don't think, in my opinion, I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going anywhere until after. If he doesn't do good this season, they're going to give him the whole, I didn't have Trey Lance year next year. Whether I agree with that or not, that's what they're going to say. So they're going to give him another year. I don't see Kyle going anywhere until, if he does bad this year with this roster, they're going to give him one more year with Trey Lance to see what he can do. And then if he doesn't do good that year, they're going to get rid of him at that point. But he's not going anywhere.
I don't see anyone in the organization that's desperate to win a Super Bowl. Jed York, he already feels like he's a champion. He's got a full stadium. He's got a new stadium. And he gets talked about a lot. Kyle Shanahan is a genius, even if he has a losing record. I mean, his reputation is completely independent of whether or not he has a Super Bowl, at least so far. So it seems like the Niners live in this world where they won the Super Bowl already. They won it in 2019. They actually beat the Chiefs, and they're Super Bowl champions, and they don't really understand why people nitpick them so much and question them because they're great. And it's like Plato. Plato would have the theory that things had like intrinsic states, the platonic ideal of something, that somehow they're just platonically a great team, and they don't necessarily have to prove it. One win against the Rams shows it. No, man, you got to prove that every freaking day. And the best teams, the teams that win the Super Bowl, the teams that have that mentality. Every day, every week, you got to prove it again. And you feel like the league isn't taking you seriously. That's not the Niners. The Niners are basking in the good old days. Hey, remember when we won the Super Bowl in 2019? People think we lost, technically, but we actually, remember that? That was great. Or last year, when we actually beat the Rams in the NFC Championship game, sure, Jaquiski Tartt dropped that pick, but if he had caught that, we would have won. So basically, we've won 2 Super Bowls. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
That's the culture in Santa Clara. I can't stand it. I can't stand it.
Agreed.
And it's Jed's fault.
I can see
it's Jed's fault.
It starts at the top always. So
He tried to beat Eddie with Harbaugh. I have high standards. And he ran Harbaugh out of town. It was purely on ego, just to prove that he was the reason the Niners were good, not Harbaugh. Well, that didn't work out. And now he just clings to Shanahan for credibility. He doesn't want to prove that he knows anything anymore. That was 10 years ago when he was competing with Harbaugh. He's not competing with Kyle. He's thanking Kyle for giving him credibility when they should be saying, you know what, Kyle, thank you so much for turning things around and getting the organization back on its feet. But we're about Super Bowls here with the 49ers. And if we feel you can't get that done, you're under review every year. I just don't feel like he is. And if Kyle isn't under review, then the players on the team that make more than Kyle aren't under review. And those are all the veteran captains. So that creates the culture right there.
Yeah, I mean, you even see it with the fan base. People get mad at me for talking about how we can improve. You know, even after they just beat the Chargers.
Best team in the league.
Right.
Who cares if they're 5-4? Doesn't matter because they proved stuff in the past, even though they didn't win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, beating the Chargers is great. Beating the Rams is great. It's fantastic. But that doesn't mean they can't improve, and that doesn't mean I'm satisfied with that. I want to see us doing the 49ers doing better than they have.
I want to see the Niners play up to have a standard. It's not about beating the Chargers. It's like if you're a sprinter, you're not racing against the other sprinters. You're racing against yourself. What's your best time? Can you beat that? It's not like, oh, I beat that guy. Like, you don't know that guy. You're not measuring yourself against that. I ran for 1 year in high school. I was decent. You're not measuring yourself against that guy. You're measuring yourself against yourself if you're good.
Yeah.
Jerry Rice, what Jerry Rice did. So, Niners, if you're a Super Bowl team, you're not saying we did what it took to beat the Chargers by 6 points at home. Like, no. Eventually, you're going to start establishing a standard. And I feel like with this team, the players that do it in 2019, they did it because so many guys hadn't gotten paid yet, including Kyle. So many guys. Now, so many of those guys are all like, they're going to get paid one way or another. Debo, Warren, I'm not saying that they aren't great players anymore, but it's a whole different culture now on this team.